This creepypasta is called Ben, a True Story. I was with two of my friends, Ben and Nick, on holiday when this all happened. We were all in an isolated part of Greece, somewhere that doesn't show up on Google Maps for some reason. We were traveling down a long stretch of road in our hired car in search of the next major city to party in. After initially planning on driving through the night, we accepted that we had lost our way and it would be getting too dark to continue. So we pulled into a gas station for directions on where we could stay. The old man handed us an old brochure of a nearby village and insisted that we go check it out, since we are just completely lost. We were left with no other option. Something different, we thought, but just how different we could never have guessed. As we took the next left turn and ventured into the headlight-lit darkness, the only form of lodging out was in remote cabins, separated far apart from each other for privacy, we guessed. The self-contained cabin had a bathroom, kitchen, queen bed, and a single bed. All that we needed for one night. Nick won the rock off for the single bed, so Ben and I would be sharing. Nick snored anyway, so I was cool with that. One feature of the cabin that unnerved me, however, was a large square, curtainless window that occupied the entire area of a vacant wall. It bothered me especially now because the night had fallen and the light was on inside, so it acted as a sort of two-way mirror. Anyone wearing black could easily look through the window without being noticed. We made plans to go out that night to the village bar, to have some drinks and maybe even tell some stories, and see where the night takes us. We discussed that we leave the key under the rock by the front porch, and if we were to split up, whoever came home first would leave the door open for the others to get in. And Ben joked, "Why don't you say it louder so everyone can hear it where we hide the key?" To which Nick found a pleasure in yelling it at the top of his lungs. Luckily, our cabin was isolated out here, and there was no one close by. I thought to myself as we drove off. It was a surprisingly fun night at the bar. We had plenty of shots of the local drink Ozo, until the bar staff informed us that we had drunk their stocks dry. It was cheap in Greece. And the next thing I knew, it was late and the bar was closing, and we had lost Ben. I thought he must have left without us, though I don't remember him telling us that he was leaving. I was slightly concerned by him acting out of character, so we left without him, taking the car. I need to piss badly. I adjusted in my seat as car headlights momentarily lit up the cabin. We turned into the driveway to the sound of gravel crunching under the tires and checked under the rock for the key. The key was gone. We tried the door handle and it was locked. What the fuck? We both looked at each other. Ben must have come home before us and locked us out. "Ben, open up! We need to piss!" "Hurry up, Ben!" We banged on the door. I heard a stumbling inside like someone literally crawling awkwardly on all fours out of the bed. Damn, he must be drunk. "I can't hold this piss in anymore," I said. Nick and I went to separate sides of the cabin to urinate, as Ben finally opened the door. It felt good urinating, but the feeling was harshly interrupted by what caught my attention at the large window, sending a large shiver up my spine. There was this long, thin set of handprints, only visible on the window from the mist outside. It looked longer than any human's hand, but much, much thinner. "Holy shit," I said, but quickly cleared my mind of the scary and irrational images it was creating, as it was certainly just a regular human hand that had been smeared, creating the illusion that it was longer, right? Either way, it occurred to me that someone or something might have been watching us. I hurriedly finished my business and rushed inside. We are not turning the light on, I thought, from looking in at us. I locked the front door and we went straight to the bed. Nick fell asleep instantly, snoring before his head even hit the pillow. After a few minutes of tolerating Nick's inconsistent snore, my drooping eyes felt weary, so I closed them, and as soon as they shut, I couldn't help but get the burning feeling that Ben's eyes had opened suddenly and were staring straight at me, menacingly. My body rose in temperature, and my heart beat quicker as I sensed this. It was as if Ben was holding his breath, his vision fixed on me angrily through the darkness. Sorry if we hadn't gone home with him, Jeez, why would he be so angry? After a few minutes of calming myself down from this irrational fear, I drifted off into sleep. Knock, knock, knock. Open up. You said you wouldn't lock it. Thud, thud, thud. It grew louder. Open the door. It's fucking cold out here. This was the single scariest moment in my entire life. The most paralyzing sensation swept over my entire body. It was Ben at the door. Suddenly, there was a movement in the sheets next to me. Something stirring. I got up faster than I ever have in my life and ran over to the door. Nick had awoken and came to the same horrific realization as soon as me. He was right behind me and kicking the door open and fleeing outside to the car. Not once did we ever look back. I started the car and beckoned Ben to follow, but he didn't know what had happened, still facing into the room. He turned on the light to see inside. This was a true story. It really happened. You can ask Nick if you don't believe me, but I wouldn't ask Ben. He doesn't say much anymore after the incident, and whatever question about what he saw that night, his face turns pale and expressionless, and he will immediately shut the nearest curtain. This creepypasta is called Mereana, Mordegard, Glesgorv. There is a video on YouTube named Mereana, Mordegard, Glesgorv. If you search this, you will find a video of a man staring intently at you, expressionless, then grinning for the last 2 seconds. The background is undefined. There is only part of the actual video. The full video lasts 2 minutes and was moved by YouTube after 153 people who viewed it gouged out their eyes and mailed them to YouTube's main office in San Bruno. Said people has also committed suicide in various ways. It's not yet known how they managed to mail their eyes after gouging them out. The cryptic inscription they each carved into their forearms had not yet been deciphered either. YouTube will periodically put up the first 20 seconds of the video to quell suspicions, so that people will not go look for the real thing and upload it. The video itself was only viewed by the actual YouTube staff member, who began screaming 45 seconds in. This man is now under constant sedation, apparently unable to recall what he saw. Other people who were in the same room as him at the time, who eventually turned off the video, say that all they heard of it was a high-pitched drilling sound. None of them dared to look at the screen. The person who uploaded the video was never found, the IP address being non-existent, and the man in the video has never been identified. This creepypasta is called Barbie.Avi. Hello, this happened to me a few months ago. I just need to share it with somebody. It all started at my friend's party. He's an artist who rented out a loft in an industrial part of town. If you can picture what a place like Detroit looked like in the 1920s, that's what this area looks like. A bunch of old turn-of-the-century factories crammed into 10 blocks. Most of them are abandoned. So I partied a little too hard that night and decided to crash on the couch at the loft. I woke up around 4 AM. The sun wasn't out yet, but you could still make things out in a dim blue light. I went to the bathroom, carefully tiptoeing around the people that were passed out on the floor. As I was taking a piss, I looked out the bathroom window and saw the panorama of deserted urban decay. I remember how much I liked places like this. It was so dark and devoid of life, and strangely serene. I went back to the couch and tried to fall asleep. After 45 minutes of staring at the ceiling, I decided I didn't want to be there any longer. So I swallowed my pride and decided to wake my girlfriend up to beg her for a ride. Since walking around the vacant streets at this time was not an option, being an awesome girlfriend, she was totally cool with it. She told me she'll be there in about a half hour, and that she'll give me a call when she was outside. My phone died 10 minutes later, so I decided to sit by the window and watch for her car. I sat there for a while. Eventually my eyes started to get heavy, and I began to doze off. A crashing noise outside woke me up. It wasn't loud, but enough to snap me back into reality. I looked out the window and scanned the area, but didn't see anything. However, across the street from the loft, near a mountain of garbage bags and one of those enormous dumpsters, I did see a computer and monitor smash against the floor that hadn't been there before. When my girlfriend arrived, I went downstairs and greeted her, just as I was about to get in the car. I remembered a friend of mine who'd blown out his power supply, so I decided to walk over to the dumpster and see what I could salvage. The monitor was worthless, but the tower seemed to have suffered almost no damage, so I put it in the trunk and we drove off. About a week had passed and I completely forgot about the tower, until my girlfriend called to let me know that it was still in the trunk and that she wanted it out. That night, I brought it home. Before I took it apart, I decided to hook it up to my monitor to see if it still worked. To my surprise, it did. It ran Windows XP and it looked like it had been wiped clean. I decided to do searches for words like tits and pussy in hopes of finding some secret stash full of weird, deviant porn that the previous owner had forgotten about. Morbid curiosity, I guess, but my search came up with nothing. There were no picture files. Then I searched for movies and one came up. It was a .avi inside a folder titled Barbie, hidden in the Windows/System32 directory, so I played it. This is where it gets disturbing. The movie was about an hour long and was made up of what seemed like raw exported footage. The footage was of this woman sitting on a chair and talking against a white backdrop. I skipped through most of the movie and it was all the same continuous shot. I decided to sit through the footage to find out what she was talking about. 15 seconds into it, the audio became extremely bad and her voice was drowned in a harsh, static background noise. I couldn't make out a thing. I imported the footage into the Final Cut and tried to mess with the levels to isolate her voice. It helped a little, but I still couldn't hear what she was saying. I was intrigued now and began to really pay attention to her face and body language. It seemed that she was being asked questions because she stopped at times to listen and then continued talking. About 15 minutes into the footage, her face began to redden and contort, as if the questions were bothering her, but she continued to answer them anyway. Shortly after, she started to cry. She stopped hysterically for the duration of the film. One of the few words I could lip read was skin. She repeated this word many times throughout the footage, and at one point, she even pulled at the skin from her arm and mouthed the word. She seemed to be unhappy with it. It kept on building, and about 40 minutes in, she was crying so hard she could barely look at the camera. She stopped talking at this point. The rest of the footage was just her crying with her head down. Oddly enough, she didn't get up or move. The screen just faded to black. I was fucking dumbfounded. I played the whole thing through many times that night, trying to find inflections and nuances in her movement that would reveal anything else about what was going on. I felt so dissatisfied. I wanted to know more. That was when I noticed that there were about 10 more minutes left on the timeline after the screen went black. 2 minutes past the darkness, there was more footage. The footage was extremely shaky, almost unwatchable, and depicted a pair of legs walking along train tracks. My guess is that the camera was accidentally left on as it was being carried somewhere. The person in this video walked along the train tracks for about 6 minutes, then turned into the forest and walked over what looked like foliage flattened by a piece of plywood. The person continued on this makeshift plywood road until the clip ended. My heart started beating with excitement, because there were train tracks a few miles away that looked very similar to the ones in the video. I had to check this out. I called up my friend Ezra. He's 6'4", 250 pounds and mostly muscle. I convinced him to go on a little adventure with me. I'm no pushover myself, but I felt if I was to go wandering into the woods looking for God knows what, some extra muscle couldn't hurt. The whole idea of investigating this video had me so excited that I couldn't sleep. The next morning, on a sunny Saturday, I took my flashlight, camera, a 7-inch cut bar knife with matte black finish and serrated edge, and went to go pick up Ezra. When I got to his house, he wasn't even awake. When I woke him up, he pretty much told me to go fuck off. I was already packed and had mentally prepared myself to do this, so I decided to go through with it without him. I parked my car at the train station, took my stuff, and hopped onto the tracks. After walking for about 2 hours, I saw a broken piece of plywood, and my knees almost buckled with excitement. I searched nearby foliage, and there it was, a little plywood trail leading off into the forest. I walked slowly along the trail, paying close attention to everything. I would stop occasionally, kneel down, and listen for anything or anyone. But it was so quiet. This was one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done. I didn't know what to expect at the end of this trail. The dense tree line gave way to a little island of grassy field, and then I saw it, a house being consumed by the forest. From the look of it, no one had lived there for 20, maybe 30 years. I got my camera and snapped a few pics. A few yards away from the house was a tool shed made of rusty sheet metal. I just sat there among the trees for a while, absorbing everything. I didn't want to go into the open field. I had a bad feeling that something would see me. It took me a while to muster the courage to go up to the house. The door was partly open. I pushed it in with the flashlight and was relieved that the inside was actually very well lit. I put the flashlight away, got my camera, and took a few more pics. There were no furniture. The floor was riddled with bricks, wood, and other rubble, and some of the walls had huge holes in them. When I went in further to explore, I saw some things that I didn't pay much mind to at the moment, but now that I think about them in hindsight, they greatly disturbed me. The first thing that seemed a little too odd was that one of the doors in the first room that I presumed led to the basement seemed a little too new to be in the house. It was also the only door that was locked. Also, when I made my way up to the second floor, I saw some chairs and a fold-up table that also seemed a little too new to be there. But what disturbed me the most was the bathroom. The dust in the mirror had been wiped away, and in the bathtub, I saw a clear plastic tarp that still had water droplets on it from when I presume it was last washed clean. That was when I heard something moan really loud. I jumped the fuck out a second-story window and ran back to the tracks. Halfway there, I realized the moaning was most likely a water pipe expanding or contracting. The little moment of relief gave way to horror when I wondered why the water would be running in an abandoned house in the middle of the fucking woods. It's been a little more than 2 months since this happened, and I haven't gone back there, nor do I plan to. This creepypasta is called Birthmark. A young man and his new bride were honeymooning in Paris. They were having a wonderful time when she decided to see if he truly loved her. She asked him if he would love her even if she wasn't beautiful. He told her that he would. So, she slowly started removing her makeup, revealing a birthmark on her face. He really loved her, but he was shocked when he saw it. After seeing his expression, she left and didn't return. With time, the man began to fear the worst and went to the police. The police thought that it was most likely the girl simply had second thoughts about the marriage, but they checked out anyway and found no evidence of foul play. As weeks turned to months, the man finally gave up on fighting his beautiful wife, and his life fell into shambles. He was so filled with grief. Unable to hold a job or go on with his life, he took to wandering the world looking for anything that might ease his pain. Years later in Borneo, he came upon a freak show in an old shabby building. He went in on a whim. In the last filthy cage, he saw a twisted, scarred, and mutilated woman rocking back and forth and groaning strange animal-like noises. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on his wife's face. This creepypasta is called Flip Book. As a kid, I loved making flip books. They're all I did in art class, and whenever I had it, I worked really hard on one particular flip book. It was around 50 pages long, I guess. It had a simple stick figure walking into the page, waving at me, and then walking off. I would look at it at least a dozen times that day that I made it. Then it got boring. You know how kids are, not entertained by one thing for very long. I tossed it under my bed and never gave it a second thought. A few months later, I was cleaning my room and swept a stack of paper out from under my bed. I couldn't quite remember what it was. I flipped through it once and got a sweet taste of nostalgia. I flipped through it more once and noticed that the pages hadn't aged or gained any dirt at all. I flipped through it a third time. The little stick man walked onto the page, waved at me, but didn't walk off. Instead, a second stick man joined him. It waltzed up, having either an item in his hand or a severely disfigured arm. It's not like anyone could tell the difference. The second stick man walked next to the first stick figure, stood there for a moment, then whacked the poor fellow upside the head. The stick figure fell, and the second stick man swung his stick at the other man. Again, and again, and again. What I assumed was his blood ran from the stick figure's rather jagged body. It looked like nothing more than smeared pencil stains. The killer stick man proceeded to bend down and tear apart the first stick man's body, limb by thin limb. Once he was done, he bent each one into characters and letters. He set them upon the page to form a single word. He grabbed the base of his own round head and tore it off. Then he tore off his legs, and then one of his arms. His zigzagged body parts formed themselves into a second word. What I read made me burn the flip book. It said, "You're next." This creepypasta is called The Woman in the Oven. During the summer of 1983, in a quiet town near Minneapolis, Minnesota, the charred body of a woman was found inside the kitchen stove of a small farmhouse. A video camera was also found in the kitchen, standing on a tripod and pointing at the oven. No tape was found inside the camera at the time. Although the scene was originally labeled as a homicide by police, an unmarked VHS tape was later discovered at the bottom of the farm's well, which had apparently dried up earlier that year. Despite its worn condition and the fact that it contained no audio, police were still able to view the contents of the tape. It depicted a woman recording herself in front of a video camera, seemingly using the same camera that the police found in the kitchen. After positioning the camera to include both her and her kitchen stove in the image, the tape then showed her turning on the oven, opening the door, and crawling inside, and then closing the door behind her. 8 minutes into the video, the oven could be seen shaking violently, after which point thick black smoke could be seen emanating from it. The camera then continued to stationary point at the oven for another 45 minutes until the batteries apparently died. To avoid disturbing the local community, police never released any information about the tape, or even the fact that it was found. Police were also not able to determine who put the tape in the well, or why the physical stature of the woman on the tape did not in any way resemble the stature of the woman found in the oven. This creepypasta is called The Google Maps Balcony Creature. On December 10th, 2011, an anonymous user on 4chan X board posted a thread with a simple instruction to view a location on Google Maps. The address led to a residential home in Nancy-Lorraine, France. Using the Street View feature of Google Maps, the image shown to the right could be seen. Debates were made on what the creature shown in the image could be. One accepted answers that it was merely a surfboard holder. However, during the debate, Google censored the creature, which led many to ask the question of why Google would do this unless it's something that they want to keep hidden. Identification of the creature is currently unknown.